Hello, Shwan. How are you? Tell me who is on this call? Like the all student.
Yes, they're all students. Rohit and Shivang, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rohit Raman. I'm a high schooler at American High School. I'm passionate about competitive programming, and I'm currently doing research at Stanford on sustainability. My goal is to start a clean tech startup.
Hi, I'm Shivang. I'm Shivang Raisrana. I'm 18 and I'm a founder. I'm the founder of Align, which is a deep tech company bringing infinite realism to augmented reality, and one that's grinding to change shopping forever.
Oh, great. Well, very nice meeting you both.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here, and I think we could get started on some of the questions. Let's start off by just introducing you a bit. As entrepreneurs, we're obsessed with you, and I personally feel that your journey is paradigmatic to the word hustle. It extends from being a professional soccer player amid the Iranian Revolution to immigrating to the United States with barely $700 at hand and a job as a car washer. And as you described on your podcast with Jason, the best car washer. Today, you're recognized as one of the most iconic investors with investments in the likes of Dropbox, Affinity, and DoorDash. All of this coming to an Anglophonic society not knowing English. Pejman, we'd love for you to elaborate on how you literally went from rugs to riches and what message you would have for young entrepreneurs in this room.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I take a lot of joy and pride to meeting people like yourself and everybody on this panel. I just want to thank Manu thinking of me and inviting me here. Yeah, I think you mentioned I grew up in Iran during the war and revolution, and my teenager life was tough time. And I was 10 years old when the revolution happened, and then 2 years after the war. And most of my teenager life was about survival through revolution and through war. But when I look back, those days made me stronger in who I am, and I can overcome the challenges. In particular, when I came to US, and I came actually unplanned. I didn't have any plan to come. I went to Germany to stay with my parents. My brother encouraged me to go to US Embassy, and I ended up coming here with no plans. I didn't know what to do. And again, it was all about survival. And, as you mentioned, the very first job I had was car wash because it doesn't require English and didn't speak the language at that time. I bought a 1973 Chevy for $750 with 5 payments of $150, and I was driving every day for 30 miles, 40 miles, wash cars and come back. Anyway, my English improved, and I at that time I ended up getting a job at the yogurt shop, and I wanted to save money, so I ended up sleeping in an attic. First, I slept in my car, and I slept in an attic above the yogurt shop, which was a storage for cups and spoons, and no air, no window. It was a tough time until one night I saw this advertising that the rug gallery in downtown Palo Alto, which is on the same street as Stanford University is hiring a salesperson. And I called, and the owner interviewed me on the phone, and he rejected me right away because he said, "You haven't sold rugs, you haven't sold cars, you haven't sold furniture, you haven't sold anything." And I insisted that he should meet me, and the next day he hired me on the spot. Fast forward, I became a really good rug salesman. 1 year I sold $8 million worth of carpets, which is like really unheard of in this business. But I realized most of my customers are investors, venture capitalists, founders. You sell Persian rugs, you go to people's home and you spend time with them, with their families, and I ask a lot of questions. And after a few years, I realized that I want to be one of these people, not because they were really wealthy, but when I was asking them what you do, everybody was building something based on knowledge. And for me, it was astonishing that you could create so much value, create jobs, and create companies that stays in business for generation based on knowledge. I started to ask a lot of questions. This is late 90s. There was no TechCrunch, no YC, no gathering. So I was very lucky to know a lot of great people, a lot of influential people, and they were open to me. And little by little, I got to know the world around me, the players, the startup ecosystem, the VCs. And I decided I wanted to jump in the ocean, although I know a little bit swimming, but maybe I should try, because this was maybe the best time of my life, and I had the opportunity to do something really extraordinary for myself and people around me. It was like I wanted to play in NBA, but I knew I won't be LeBron James, but I knew I would be the best agents the league has ever seen. So I knew my strength at that time was networking, knowing people, and connecting founders to the right people. I started to do a lot of networking events. I invited the entire Sequoia Senior Partnership to Rug Gallery. I brought Iranian entrepreneurs, and I remember one night I did Indian, Iranian, and Italian entrepreneurs. It was 3 eyes, and invited everybody who was from and people really loved it. And I started to make a lot of mistakes. I learned by trying and failing, and paid a lot of attention that what works, what doesn't work. And I ended up being the first investor in Dropbox, Lending Club, and many others. Around 2009 and 10, I realized that founders are left alone after raising the first $1 million, for example. And I decided to build an institution to serve founders at day zero when you're in your garage. But I knew my skills were not enough to be the best partner for entrepreneurs at that stage. I knew investing, I had a good deal flow, everybody knew me, but I never built and shipped product. So I wanted to partner with an entrepreneur, not an investor. And my current partner, Mara Hershenson, we know each other for 21 years. I actually backed her company in her second company in 2003. So it took me 4 years to convince her to join me after starting 3 companies, and we started Pair, the current venture capital firm that we have. And our promise to founders is we are your best partner to go from 0 to 1 journey. Mara and I were kind of yin and yang. I'm a college dropout. She's a Stanford PhD with 24 patents, and started 3 companies, never invested in any company. I never started a company, a tech company, and I invested in over 150 startups before the firm. So it's a great teamwork, and I can talk more, but our goal is building institution that it's going to be in the business for the next 100 years, and having an outstanding performance fund by partnering with founders building category-defining companies. Today, our company's worth over $80 billion. We have 2 IPOs with Garden Health and DoorDash. I think it's a monumental achievement for our founders in 8 years. And I think we are 16 people going to 20, over $400 million under management. Majority of our investors are nonprofit organization and endowments.
Well, that's awesome. Just to add on a bit, we're just curious to how you were able to, before AngelList and before YC, you organize these network events, and I'm sure there's a big buzz around this rug store. How, as a rug seller with no background in investments, were you able to actually convince people and organize collections of such events? And also, to what extent did these events actually drive rug sales?
Yeah, I think the rug sales obviously is part of it. So I think naturally people come to your gallery, you see beautiful rugs, and they have money, they call you. But for me, was the networking and being very genuine, helping founders, and they realize I can connect them to the right people, which they don't have access to, especially venture capitalists. So it's really playing my cards well, knowing what are my strengths, and really trying to help founders and build a lot of networking events. And venture capitalists, including like Doug Leone early on in Sequoia, he realized I have access to Iranian founders at Stanford. By the way, when I started this, I didn't know how to start the deal flow, and I took Stanford directly at the electrical engineering and computer science department, and I looked at every single Persian name, and I sent an email to them, said, "You want to grab a Persian tea for me?" And so I built kind of a relationship with the students at Stanford, and few of them actually became a founder. I funded them. So by hustling and finding that your immediate network, and networking for me, it's not a task; it's part of what I do. And I don't. Some people think, okay, I work till 6 p.m. and I go to network after. It's not a task. It's just you're either really good at it or you're not. And today, actually, networking has really changed. At that time, you can be a great networker without even seeing people by writing blogs or tweak the right thing so you can build your own network. But it has to be very authentic, very genuine. Sorry.
Go ahead, Rohit.
Okay. You've had a history of backing some world-class founders like Drew Houston at Dropbox, Tony Zhu at DoorDash, and Josh Reeves at Gusto. You've developed a particular eye finding brilliant founders. For example, finding Andy Rubin, the creator of Android, while he was working at his first company. What do you think separates brilliant founders from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there are a few things. One, their genuine commitment to be an entrepreneur, which means building something out of nothing and building something bigger than themselves. That's number one. Their relationship with the product they're building and their users is very authentic. They're focusing on the things that are passionate about it. Unlike they're not following the herd, and they have a vision for what their company look like in the next 10 to 20 years. Insane amount of focus. I think entrepreneurs only build companies with their team and their customers. You know, you never see these people in any VC event, no parties. They're just focusing and they're working with their team. Ability to build a team. Can you really attract talent early on? Can you share your vision? They are captain of the ship. They're building something bigger than themselves, and their employee, their shareholders, their users are above themselves. They are paranoid in the right way. They ask questions every day, although things doing really well. They have a vision, but they question themselves if they're making the right decision. So combination of a variety of different things. It's and getting to know them. You know, I was very lucky to meet this, and you know, we invested in a few really good other founders that you don't know them, but in maybe 10 years you hear about them. And I think you know, founders have different personality, different background, but sometimes when you ask them, why are you doing this? If you really truly ask yourself, is this something I want to do the next 20 years or 10 years? If you're really honest about it, sometimes you come to a conclusion that this is not something that I really love to do in the next 10 years. So my encouragement and suggestion to you is, if you're on an entrepreneur path, really be very honest to yourself and ask question, is this something I wake up every day for at least next 10 years I want to do every single day? This is the product I love. This is what I really want to do. And if you're honest, sometimes you see, no, I don't want to build this product. I don't love it, and I don't see myself doing it in 10 years. But these founders want to do, like, for example, you mentioned Josh. When I met him, the very first thing he told me, he said, Pejman, I want to do this for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do. And this is my last company, and I'm not going to do anything else. I want to empower and helping small businesses. And the way I want to do it, I just want to start with payroll. That's what he started it. Same with Tony, when you talk about he saw his mom working so hard at the restaurant, and he is, you know, people think DoorDash is a food delivery company, but DoorDash is not a food delivery company. DoorDash is a very logistic last mile delivery company that can deliver anything from point A to point B. But he said, if I can deliver ice cream in less than 45 minutes before it gets melted, I can deliver anything. And now you can see they're delivering medicine, they're delivering flowers, they're delivering Walmart, Macy's. So that vision, and how do you articulating that vision? What does your company look like in 10 years? You mentioned Drew Houston. A few years ago was Dropbox 10th anniversary, and I was walking with Drew at the party. I said, Drew, if we meet again each other in 10 years, which is like the 20th anniversary of Dropbox, where do you think Dropbox is? He said, I want to shorten the work hours from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. So that's kind of the type of a founder can articulate the future. He didn't talk about the product. He didn't say, I want to make it like changing the pricing strategy. He just pictured a future that is a result of Dropbox. So what he meant was Dropbox will create so many different tools for people at work that you don't need to accomplish what you can accomplish in 5 days. In 10 years, you can accomplish in 4 days because of Dropbox tools. So really founders have a clear vision of the future of what they want to build.
Awesome. So, I mean, you also talk about this pattern recognition that you've developed over the years, but are there any renegades? Are there any outliers, founders who by your judgment, don't necessarily fit the box or even catch a few red flags, but they yet manage extraordinary levels of success?
Yeah, I think Ray and Shubham at Affinity, we funded them. They were sophomore students, Stanford, and now they're building. They're just going to announce a big raise at the huge valuation, and they grew. And extraordinary founders. And again, this is one of the things best founders do is invest in themselves and grow as the company grows. In your personality, in your knowledge, in your team building, in your leadership. And it's amazing when you talk to Ray and Shubham, you see two different people in terms of the leadership skills versus they were sophomore students and raised money. Now they build a CRM that top financial institutions in the world are using it. So I think outliers, those founders always invest in themselves, grow. Drew was a hacker. Now he runs a public company. He sits on the board of Facebook. Think about it. How do you do that? And it's actually, we have a program that every year we select top 20 computer science students at Fair Garage, which Manu was part of it. It's the we take every year to meet the founder, and then one year we took them to Drew at Dropbox, and actually Ray Affinity asked, you were a hacker. How do you become? You're taking your company public, and you're 2,000 employees. How do you become a CEO of a pre-IPO company? And he said, I read books. I just thought, okay, I'm a hacker, but I can train myself by reading books. He actually has a list of 13 or 17 books that he recommends that founders to read. I really encourage you to go and if you search it, you can see Drew Houston book recommendation. And it's funny that people pay $100,000 to get dinner with the CEO of Intel. I just wrote his books for $20, and I learned more than an hour in lunch or dinner. So I think invest in yourself, go to the areas that you're uncomfortable, and build skills and knowledge. And I mean, you can change, you can become better in terms of leadership, in terms of communication. Many things that people think they're not good at it, they can always improve.
Fantastic. Rohit?
So, like you said about Dropbox, when you're walking with Drew Houston, you asked him, like, what do you see in the future? So, what trends excite you in the current market? Are there any things you would like to pursue? What are some unique shifts you would expect to see post-COVID? And what does 2030 look like?
Oh, but the honest answer is I don't know. I rely on you guys to come and tell me what the future looks like. And that's the beauty of my job is I take it day by day. I always look for people who come and surprise me. Obviously, the pace of innovation has been accelerated with many tools that is available. Like when I invested in Mars company in 2003, she had to go and buy computers to build networking. Now you have AWS and it's almost free to start. It's actually free to start the company, just need a laptop and enough food to don't die. It wasn't before. You have to raise $5 million first to just making sure you have your data somewhere. Today, you don't need it. So there's an advantage for you. I really don't know the future. I think, obviously the world of artificial intelligence, machine learning is gonna change many things in terms of the innovation. What specifically those platforms or technology allow, I don't know. But for example, one of our companies just announced today, out of 4 years in stealth mode, they're making cheese out of plants, for example. I never knew we were going to invest in the company that make cheese out of plants, but you need a founder who has studied the market, who has a passion, has the knowledge, build the science around it, and you want to partner with those people. And it took them 4 years to come out with this technology. But that's sort of the things I never knew I was going to invest in the plant-based cheese. Same thing. And in 2030, I think I really believe people like you will make a better world for all of us, using especially technology, people who are driven, people who think about society and building products can create jobs and wealth for yourself, for your family, for your employees, and as a result, better schools, better hospitals, better education.
So in talks at Google with Mars Hershenson, you spoke about the importance of connecting with your customers and becoming friends with them. What are some important characteristics that made linking the gap between your personal life and work life possible?
Yeah, I think the customers, I actually learned to run business, you never sell a product. You sell what that product does to you. So I never sold a carpet. I always said, what is this carpet is doing to you and to your home and the beauty, and then it stays in the business. Same thing here. I think if you're just selling a particular software, it's better to one, build a relationship with your customer and making sure you sell the outcome of that product. And that sets a skill. I think founders are the best seller of their products because they understand it. So if you're selling anything, you should be, for long, you should be the first salesperson of your product to the customers. And that's again part of the things that I have met founders that they're brilliant technologists, but they said, I'm not a good salesman here. I think you can train yourself to be a better communicator with your customers. I think talking to the right customers at the right time. Sometimes people take the wrong customers, right side. I mean, you need to understand their pain and then target the right customers to begin with. Sometimes the issue might not be the product, is how you describe a product or who the customer you're talking to. And the product works if you change the strategy. Sometimes you change your sales pitch and then people like the product.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, this year, both Pejman and Mar top the Forbes Midas list, which entails the top VCs and angels across the globe. But as I scroll down through, at the 97th rank was the sole Indian investor, the investor who invested in Flipkart. India is an emerging market, but even in 2021, we see but a single representative. Would you have any comment on where you see India or other emerging markets grow, especially when we see a massive surge in companies based locally servicing clients internationally?
Yeah, we actually invested in a company recently with Sequoia Capital. What I think last 10 years, the Indian market is just big, so big. India itself, the majority of the entrepreneurs build products for domestic local market. But now I'm seeing emerging founders coming out for building companies for the global market. I think the next 10 years would be the wave of really amazing companies coming out of India with the kind of the global market as their customer base. I really believe in that because we are seeing those companies now. And it makes sense because the local market is just so big. If I'm starting an e-commerce company, I think India is big enough to build a great company. But there are now, especially COVID taught us that we can have distributed teams around the world and build companies there. I think there will be a new wave of entrepreneurs from India tackling global issues.
That's awesome to hear. I'd actually like to build on to that too, because as I mentioned earlier, I'm running a deep tech company. Unfortunately, the largest institutes of India, the largest engineering institutes and science institutes, they don't really have the research faculty to support just deep dives into AI, like the field I'm working in augmented reality. So I'm actually on a talent hunt in the United States, but I'm working on raising money in India. Would you have any advice for someone in my position, or any advice for people in general working on hard deep tech companies outside the US that don't necessarily bear the research facilities and infrastructure to continue building their goals forward?
Yeah, I don't think it's easy to be there and then hiring people, but it's not impossible. I think you could do it if you share your vision. If people really want to work with the founders who have a clear vision about the future, if you have a clear answer, why me, why my company, you might be able to attract talent from everywhere around the world, US, Eastern Europe, or Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. It all depends of what is your vision, who you are, and then simple question that you should ask yourself that why this person should join me.
Yeah.
Rohit?
Like I said before, I'm trying to, my goal is to start a clean tech startup. So I'm currently 14 years old and I'm incredibly passionate about building a social enterprise that makes our energy consumption carbon neutral and allows us to bring sustainability into our daily lives. What companies working in this space really excite you, and what tips or advice would you have for young students interested in this?
Yeah, I don't know any specific company. Obviously, this is the space everybody is looking at it. There are some companies coming out of it. For me, the advice to you, just first of all, congratulations to tackling like really global problem. This is one of those things. It doesn't matter you're in India, US, or Iran, or Africa. I think educate yourself, read a lot, talk to people, make sure you find a mentor in this space. You can always go to somebody with deep expertise. I think there are a lot of events online and some communities. You can actually start a community of people like yourself. One of the things we do at Pair, we build communities around common interests. Like for example, Per Garage at Stanford was common interest that people really want to use computer science to build and solve problems. You can have the same community of people like yourself. You start from your local, you start your city and in India, and then you can go globally. I think building a community is really important. You can meet like-minded people, share ideas, learn, and sometimes you find your partners in that community.
Awesome.
I think if you build a community of people, you can invite speakers like me, but they are deep domain experts in sustainability, and invite them, and then little by little you build a network of your own.
I'd like
Fantastic.
to build on that too, because I mean, you're the greatest outsider of outsider who made it in. For some of us here who don't necessarily have access into these communities, what would you have any recommendation of how, as an 18-year-old or how as a young kid, would we make our way in or through accessing the effects of the entire network?
Sorry, Shivam, can you ask the question? What was the question? Was how do you get to a community of who?
In the entire tech VC community, or just in the tech space, who could probably guide you through while you're on your startup journey?
Yeah, I always think about my immediate community. I give you an example. When I started to be an angel investor, I didn't know who to talk to. I went to Iranian community at Stanford, and I started to build relations with them, and little by little it grew. You meet two Iranian students, they introduce you to another students from different countries, and they get to know you. So I think it's just go to your immediate. I just go to my high school first, and I say, okay, let's build a community of people who are interested in tech in my high school, and then grow it from there. You don't need, in order to be in this part of community, you just don't need to be just arriving in Silicon Valley in one particular community. I think just go to your immediate. And I think you have to find something that is very authentic to you. You have some knowledge around it, and you can give before you get.
That's a good point. I actually have a question from Paula. She says, how important is empathy to be a successful venture capitalist in the world today? What do you think?
Well, I think it's really important. I think it's, I don't think the world of venture capital is very different than the regular world that we live in. And I think empathy is as important as anything we do every day. And I think same thing in the venture capital world, especially when you work with the founders who are risking everything they have. Very unknown, limited resources, taking a lot of risk, kind of the emotional roller coaster every day. You wake up in the morning and you think this is the best thing you do. At noon, you think you have to go back to Google or back to Stanford or back to high school. So I think having empathy is as important as anything you do in life, especially in the venture capital business.
Amazing. I got another question from a young student, Love, who says, what was the most difficult time during your investing journey and what kept you going through that time?
Well, I never had a difficult time other than I think I missed some really big companies like Facebook and a few others. And for me, it's always learning from those mistakes I made. And I actually, I think life is really long and you learn. And I think the best thing, just even at the most difficult time, you turn it to be an experience and learn from it. So for me, it has been really never been a difficult time. It's just more challenges, especially today, very competitive world. Everybody wants to invest in early stages. How do you build a team? How do you stand out? Why entrepreneurs should partner with you is the question we as a firm ask ourselves every day.
I agree. I have an interesting question from Husna. She says, many founders tend to be obsessive about detail and very hands-on, but as they grow, they'll need to learn how to delegate and let go of their baby. How do entrepreneurs learn how to do that successfully?
Say it again, Manu. Sorry.
Husna says that many founders tend to be obsessive about the detail, about the detail of the projects and very, very hands-on. But as they grow, they need to learn how to delegate and let go of their baby project, right? How do entrepreneurs learn how to do that successfully?
I think it's, I mean, you have to, as an entrepreneur and CEO, when you grow a team, you have to fire yourself every 6 months and do something else. And that's the hard part. The best entrepreneurs, they come and every 6 months things change. I think to me is always you building the right team around you. And once you establish that trust, then you can let things go. I think part of it is sometimes you don't trust anybody else doing what you want to do, but it comes back to the team you build. If you build an exceptional team that you can trust, I think it comes to a point that sometimes you don't do anything because you have such a great team, and your job as a CEO down the road is just building the right team. And if you ask right now, like Tony and Drew at DoorDash or Dropbox, what they're gonna say is the majority of their time is just going through recruiting and building the team, and that's kind of the magic. If you build a team that they don't need you and they do it on their own, it's the best thing can happen.
I love it. We have a lot of questions, but I really like this question. What are some values you live by in your life every single day? Like, what are some like Pejmanisms, if I were to say? Like, what are some values that make you go, that this is what I really stand for?
Yeah, always be very kind, respectful, give before you get, respect people, who they are, what they do, what they believe in. It's very important for me.
Love it. More questions? Any more final questions? Shivang, Rohit, anyone in the group, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
We can't help but ask, who's your favorite football team and player? We demand an extensive explanation.
Yeah, from childhood, I've been a big fan of Manchester United, and I'm still a big fan. They had a terrible season last few seasons. Obviously, as a player, I'm a big fan of Leo Messi, and my partner Mar is from Barcelona, so I can't say Ronaldo, but yeah, I actually love Manchester United, and when you attach to a team from childhood, you can't change. Yeah, I'm a big Manchester United fan.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Pejman, you got 5 more minutes? How's your schedule looking?
No, I gotta have a sharp 2 minutes. I have to be at 11
Question.
a.m. and just one more question.
We have an interesting question from Rachna. She says, how do you know if an idea is worth commercializing on or spending time on?
Well, I think talking to users or your customers first, customer discovery. I think it's really important. There's a professor at Stanford has a kind of the guidance of customer discovery. I forgot his name, but I can send it to you. And it's very important you do customer and user discovery. And sometimes you don't know until you build a prototype, you put it out there and pay a lot of attention to users.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Pejman.
Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you so much. Perfect.